Greetings, dear friend, and welcome to the forest. This is a complex ecological system consisting of biota and abiota that provides a variety of ecosystem services. Wait, too many fancy words. Let's start this all over again, but in a simple language. So, forest is an ecological system or ecosystem. Ecosystem is a combination of living organisms called biota and non-living organisms called abiota that work together in a closed system. This system is characterized by nutrient cycles and energy flows. For example, here in the forest we can see plants, moss, grass and animals that represent living organisms. At the same time, we can have here fresh air, water cycling, nutrient cycling, carbon capture and so on that represent non-living components. Altogether, the components of an ecosystem is much more than the sum of its parts. Driven by the dynamic combination of different components and their interrelations in an ecosystem, that ecosystem performs certain functions. These functions give certain benefits to people, for example, myself. And these benefits that an ecosystem offers to people are called ecosystem services. For example, let's look at this tree. One thing that the tree gives me is the fresh air that I breathe in and also recycles my carbon dioxide that I breathe out. Then I can use the branches of the tree or the wood inside it to either use it as firewood, or I can cut it and sell it and gain economic profit. Then this tree also purifies water, groundwater, that it's going through its roots. Then this tree also provides visual amenity, like I receive pleasure of viewing this tree. So altogether, these non-use and use benefits of the tree are actually ecosystem services of the tree. And when combined with all the trees of the forest, we have the forest ecosystem services. To make the identification and assessment of the ecosystem services convenient, the scientists have categorized them into four main categories. These are the provisioning, regulating, cultural, and supporting ecosystem services. So, provisioning ecosystem services, as its name suggests, provide people with certain products, resources for consumptive use and for a good life. The examples can include food, such as berries, mushrooms, fresh water for drinking and other purposes, timber for as firewood or for cutting and constructing houses, then for example medicinal plants or other herbs for collection, and generally leaves, branches, grass, plants and other materials that can be used in handicraft, in other purposes, in producing some items and selling them, and so on. So, regulating ecosystem services help to regulate the environment to create favorable and supportive living conditions for people and other organisms. These regulating ecosystem services can include pest control and disease control, pollination by insects which contributes to the food supply, water purification and air purification, and carbon capture and sequestration. In fact, Considering that climate change is one of the issues present in the modern world, carbon sequestration by forests is one of the major contributors to mitigating that climate change. Then there are cultural ecosystem services. Cultural ecosystem services provide benefits, non-quantifiable benefits, to people in terms of enhancing the development of literature, art, religion, and other aspects of cultural life. Examples here can include the recreational value when people come to the forest to relax and rest after the workday. They can come to the forest for aesthetic pleasure of observing the beautiful landscapes of the forest, for cultural and spiritual events and holidays and celebrations, and for scientific and educational purposes. In fact, what we're doing now is we're using the forest for educating you about ecosystem services. And for example, the Amazonian forest has enormous cultural, spiritual value for the local communities inhabiting it. Therefore, these communities attach enormous value to the forest in the Amazon. Finally, we should not forget about supporting ecosystem services. These are the services that ensure that the ecosystem can provide all other services that we mentioned before. Examples of supporting ecosystem services include photosynthesis in plants and leaves of trees, soil formation and all the processes of soil maintenance, and nutrient cycling in the entire forest. So, as you have seen, the forest is an ecosystem that provides a multitude of services. These services are beneficial to the people in different ways, in terms of economic development as the supplier of resources, in terms of cultural health benefits as the provider of fresh air and food and other resources, and the stimulant for cultural, spiritual, scientific development. Some of the services can be clearly visible, while others are performed on the background. But why do we need to know about these ecosystems and their services and so on? Well, firstly, when we know about what a forest brings to us, we can actually see how the forest is valuable to the economic, social, cultural and scientific development for people. Then it allows us to assess how much forest brings to us in terms of benefits, as well as how much we're losing in benefits if the forest is polluted. Now, knowing what benefits this forest brings to people, to me and to you, and what ecosystem is generating in terms of gains for us as human beings, don't you want to protect it and conserve it in its natural state? Well, I certainly do. At this point, you may ask, so how can we document the contribution of the forest ecosystem to people's economic and social well-being? And why does it matter? Why do we need to do this? In fact, answers to these questions we will explore in the next training. See you there!